When I was diagnosed with diabetes, I was very scared.
Diabetes was something that we had in the family.
I was scared if I lost my sight, what is it going to mean? But I was always in denial.
His first course of action was to find out what the root cause of it is.
Couldn't there be something that he could do to cure himself?
Michael had to do what was best for Michael.
You want to reverse something that's incurable, you have to be a little radical here.
Welcome to The Incurables. I'm Don Wildman. Michael Collins readily admits that he's responsible for his health issues. Heredity probably played a factor, but a lifetime of poor eating habits and a stubborn refusal to change his ways are the primary reasons Michael found himself with advanced diabetes. Even after doctors warned him of all the dangers the disease can present, including, eventually, death, Michael continued with his poor nutrition choices. It seemed he was determined to self-destruct. That is, until an optometrist confirmed his diabetes was affecting Michael's vision and would soon cause him to go blind. This startling revelation set Michael on a course of self-reflection that would take him face to face with the hard truth about his destructive relationship with food.
My emotions and food goes way, way, way back. In that period when I was re-diagnosed with diabetes, I kind of shut myself away from people. If I didn't want to deal with something, I could just always eat and just shovel food down. You know, it was part of my pattern because I would eat. In eating the heavy foods, I would go into sleeping, and sleeping meant I didn't have to deal with the world. My mother was dying of cancer. There was so much going on inside of me emotionally. And for me, food, which had always been a comfort for me, really became a comfort. I'd go to visit my mom's, I'd go to the hospital cafeteria, I'd have turkey burgers, I'd have this, I'd have that. Then I found they had the juice machine. And you know, that was just drinking pure sugar. Between the stress of my mother being sick, stress of work, and just eating the wrong foods. That was, you know, the worst of worst times.
Michael grew up in the 1950s and 60s on the west side of Long Island. He enjoyed school and by all accounts was a good student. He was equally enthusiastic about sports. He was active in everything.
In junior high school and high school, he played football, he played basketball, he played lacrosse.
Growing up in Long Island, you gotta remember something, there's a subculture here. You know, in Long Island and in Maryland, you know, young kids play lacrosse.
So yeah, he was always active, always into sports.
He was a great lacrosse player, really was.
Michael was intellectual, he was athletic, and kind of quiet and shy, but he'd smile and go out of his way to just let me know that he knew I was looking at him and smiling. He'd smile back.
He was the apple of everybody's eye. He was always happy-go-lucky. He just brought joy to the family.
One of Michael's greatest pleasures was food.
Stories about me eating were legendary.
Michael was the ultimate omnivore.
He always ate.
He ate everything but the thank you, come again on the menu.
Michael had always had this obsession for sweets. He said, I'll make you a cake like Grandma used to make. But the thing is, he would eat half of the cake before I could get to it.
But back in those days, I was very athletic, so it didn't really catch up on me, didn't really show on me because of my lifestyle then.
Diabetes was always something that we had in the family. And my mother would always tell me, you gotta be careful, you gotta be careful.
Yet, as a child, I had no idea what the sugar was doing to me. I had no idea what it could do to me.
While in college, Michael developed an appreciation for poetry and studied yoga. He explored spiritual and metaphysical teachings, but eventually he left them behind to pursue what most would consider a normal career path.
I wanted to go into the corporate world because I wanted to make my parents, quote unquote, proud of me. You know, when I look back on it now, I felt like that was the beginning of me selling my soul. It was a shift. It was more of a sedentary lifestyle. You know, with my worst weight, I had gone up to 285 pounds.
We were concerned when his weight started getting up, 230, 240. You know, he's never been that heavy. We knew something had to change because he was definitely going in the wrong direction.
Michael continued to eat like he did when he was active, but now the pounds weren't coming off. The extra weight he carried started to cause health problems, so he went to see the doctor.
In 1991, I was first diagnosed with diabetes. And, I didn't take it seriously at all. I always thought that I could reverse it with diet, but I wasn't consistent.
He would binge. He would go no meat for 6-8 months. Then he would eat hamburgers galore.
What I thought was a good diet there was still so much crap in it.
It was quite sobering. I didn't really detect a note that he was totally despaired. Michael is not prone to wear his heart on his sleeve, but I knew it was very serious.
I just didn't know what to say or how to really handle it. To see that now he has this sugar, which ran in our family, sometimes it skips a generation and everything. It really hurt me to my heart that it had to fall on him.
Mike has always been in and out of his diet, and this was about the call to either be in or out.
And in 1998, I was re-diagnosed with diabetes, and I was still in denial.
It was probably the lowest I had ever seen him, and it scared me because I could tell he was scared. He didn't seem to be in control like he usually was.
I had very good intentions, but I had very bad information. And as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
The food that had always provided comfort for Michael Collins had now become a crutch. And while it may have supported him somewhat emotionally, physically, his eating habits had begun to have serious consequences.
And back then, I didn't understand, what my A1C, what the scores were, what they meant. I didn't want to prick myself and take my blood sugars. Part of me was foolish. Part of me just didn't know the severity of it. Part of me didn't know the cruelty of diabetes.
It was really hard to accept. It really hurt me.
It was a scary time. Diabetes can rob you of limbs, rob you of your life, rob you of your sexuality. You can end up on dialysis. Diabetes will break down your whole system.
I was frightened. I was fearful because I thought that he would journey out if he did not truly anchor himself and shift his diet.
Doctors constantly wanted to put me on medication. I refused to go on medication because with the medication, there's always a side effect that you're going to pay for. And then, I started noticing little things with the vision, started wearing glasses, and I just noticed the vision breaking down more and more.
He did explain to me that he was having vision issues. And with my limited knowledge of diabetes, I know that is often an effect that people have. So I was concerned about that.
In November, after I got diagnosed, I started shooting insulin. I started taking high blood pressure medication because the pressure in the eyes. I was losing my sight. At one point, the doctor said I couldn't drive.
He called me when he had this appointment with the eye doctor, and he asked me to come by and pick him up because they told him not to drive. He hadn't told me about his eyes at first. And when I went there, and heard that doctor explaining to him that you could go blind and the things he was saying, I was totally upset.
I was very scared. I was scared if I lost my sight, what is it going to mean? I've always been independent, and I started to take it seriously.
His ophthalmologist diagnosed Michael with advanced retinopathy caused by his diabetes. The disease, over time, affects the circulatory system of the retina by weakening the arteries. They in turn will hemorrhage, and these leaking vessels often lead to swelling and decreased vision. Other symptoms include blurriness, floating spots, and sudden blindness. If detected early, retinopathy can be treated, but usually its symptoms don't show up until well after the most serious damage is done. Michael's retinopathy diagnosis fell into this category.
He wanted me to come back within the next week. He wanted to start the process of lasering my eyes. So I went for a second opinion, and he put the fear of God into me that I'm going to have, my eyes lasered, I'll be disabled, and eventually to blindness.
Michael decided to allow doctors to perform the pan-retinal photocoagulation procedure on his right eye. This laser surgery is intended to stop the progression of the condition by sealing leaking blood vessels.
It was just painful. It was very invasive. And I didn't feel good about it. And I would not recommend it for anybody.
The doctor wanted him to have surgery again on the other one, and here he's not really sure of the first eye.
Michael was always doubtful with doctors that couldn't there be something that he could do to cure himself.
After years of refusing to deal with his diabetes, the threat of blindness finally convinced Michael Collins to see the light and take action. He agreed to let doctors operate on one of his eyes, and the experience left him both frightened and depressed. He had to find a different way out because this course of action and this disease had become too much to bear.
After I had my eye lasered, I started losing my balance. And I guess my body was dehydrated because I always felt like I was passing out. I had started altering my diet, but I didn't really know what to eat.
Michael became aware of the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center run by Dr. Gabriel Cousins. Their program is centered on a detoxification procedure that includes fasting, spiritual retreats, and health education programs. Michael connected with the concept.
Dr. Cousins was going to be in New York City, and I went into the city to see him. And the next day, after the consultation, I was out on a plane going out for the Reversing Diabetes program.
I said, there's no cure for diabetes. And I didn't want to see him get let down in spending money. It wasn't so cheap, but your life, is worth whatever.
My response to him going to Arizona was, go for it. Try something different. Michael had to do what was best for Michael, and that's what he did.
It's important to understand our approach, what we call it a reversing diabetes naturally approach, 21-day program, is we really treat everybody the same. Now, everyone gets a diabetic workup. Everybody starts with a 7-day green juice fast, and this is the time we help people come off their insulin.
While that's going on, the program consists of yoga, meditation, and then there were meetings. I'd meet with Dr. Cousins every morning.
The problem when you're fasting is you move very quickly and you can go into insulin shock. So we're monitoring 4 times a day, and it's pretty intense to make this work right.
My blood sugar was coming down. I believe my blood sugar was maybe in the 80s, which is very normal. And I stopped taking all medication.
The second week is addressing what we call the psycho-emotional aspects. And almost everybody with diabetes has psycho-emotional aspects. It's just the way it is.
Metaphysically speaking, if there's a cause for diabetes, What has been written is that diabetes is about looking for sweetness outside of yourself.
The truth is, there's never enough food for a hungry soul. So we address that because you have to be able to live this lifestyle.
It was about me. It was about me not feeling good about myself. It was about me looking for love outside of myself, which are all psychological symptoms of the diabetes.
The third cycle is training people of how to prepare proper foods. And what we mean by proper food is low glycemic, meaning no sugar. Once they're stable in what we call non-diabetic physiology, then they can move to what we call phase 1.5 and can have what we call low glycemic foods. Still, forever no white sugar, because it's really not good for anybody.
The changes that Michael experienced in just the first few days convinced him that he had made the right decision.
It was amazing. I felt my strength coming back. And then, all of a sudden, I went through a healing crisis. And for the remainder of my stay, I was very sick. My system was starting to clean itself out and starting to rebuild itself. But in the process, I felt really, really, really bad.
He was so weak from this toxicity, and as he came, he was already weak, that there were times that we literally had to carry him to the next program.
It was not a pretty point in my life. And I just really didn't know sometimes if I was going to get through the day.
Michael's dramatic and debilitating response to the detoxification was difficult for him. But Dr. Cousins had seen this often in his patients. It was also apparent that Michael was getting better.
When Michael first came, his blood sugar hit about 240. By the time he finished the program, he was somewhere between 80 and 90. Less than 100 is considered within normal. His cholesterol was down to 157, which is completely normal. We like to call that a success.
When Michael returned home, he was still weak, but encouraged. He would now move into the next phase of the recovery program.
I went out there for 3 weeks, the middle of January, came back about the second week in February. If you saw me, I was probably about 175 pounds, give or take.
I would just encourage him to keep doing what he's doing. And so little by little, he kept saying he was all right and that he was getting stronger every day.
To understand why our program works is really understanding that it's a radical approach to healing diabetes. Now, what's radical about it is we're saying you really got to change your lifestyle. You really do need to go plant source only, to not have sugar. You need to exercise. You're naturally going to lose weight. These are radical things for most people.
Michael had started to get his diabetes under control. His optometrist, however, refused to treat him if he didn't agree to more eye surgery. So Michael looked elsewhere. After a quick check in the phone book, he found exactly what he was looking for.
It said nutritional optometry. And that was Dr. Ben Lane.
As a nutritional optometrist, I've been studying the relationship of nutritional factors to eye conditions.
He told me that I had minimal retinopathy and that there was a touch of glaucoma, but with the raw food diet, the glaucoma is healing also.
Dr. Lane ran a series of tests to determine what nutritional deficiencies might be contributing to Michael's deteriorating eyesight.
We found with Michael's case, he was extremely low in red blood cell chromium and high in the antagonist to chromium vanadium.
Being at a nutritional optometrist, he will give me a chromium supplement as opposed to a regular optometrist who will just want to laser my eye and tell me that's the end of it.
He was already doing an excellent job in going to raw foods and starting to get vitamins and nutrients that he needed and starting to lose weight and starting to normalize his blood sugar level. So I think what we did mainly was to give Michael support and monitor and see that he doesn't get into trouble.
After working so hard to get to this point, Michael had no intention of letting himself or his family down again.
Michael's recovery from his diabetes is nothing less than miraculous.
I couldn't believe it. I didn't think that there was any cure for sugar diabetes. And to look at him today and he's smiling, it's a whole new Michael.
You have to get your mind right first to get your body right. And then once you start doing those things, other things in your life will be right.
I feel extreme joy and happiness for him, and also selfishly for myself, because he's my dear friend. And I know that it's important to him to have the same quality of life that he's always experienced.
What I want to do is show people that have quote unquote incurable diseases that nothing is incurable.
Michael Collins' lifelong battle with food and his refusal to acknowledge the severity of his diabetes could have cost him a lot more than his eyesight. Fortunately, he decided to take responsibility for his health, and with a naturopathic approach, he was able to regain control of his health and save his life.